Welcome back, 7th grade team. This is Mrs. Allen, the math coach at Bouchard Middle School. We are continuing our 2-week journey as we're learning about probability. So please be sure that you have your supplies for today's lesson. And remember, you can feel free to pause or rewind the lesson at any time because we want to make sure that we're working at your pace. We will begin by reviewing our independent practice from yesterday when we learned about how to determine the experimental probability of an event. So take a few moments to check your answers on your independent practice. You can pause your video now. So today's learning objective is to determine the experimental and theoretical probabilities of an event. We're going to start by participating in a sort, the kind that you do in your classroom, where we're going to identify which situation goes under a particular category. So we have a good understanding about experimental and theoretical probability, but sometimes we need to be able to decide if we need to determine the theoretical or experimental probability. Now, this is often the case with word problems, but it's actually easier than you may think. So let's look at a few different situations to practice how we know if we are determining the theoretical or experimental probability of an event. So for our first situation, we have a spinner divided into 6 equal parts. They're labeled blue, red, yellow, purple, orange, and green. So Denise spun the spinner, landing on red 8 times, blue 13 times, yellow 7 times, and purple 4 times. What is the probability that Sue landed on blue? What is the probability that Sue landed on blue? So we see that she actually had a spinner, and it says that she spun the spinner. And we want to know the probability that she landed on blue. Because we know that she has conducted an experiment, this actually is considered experimental probability. Our next example, Carlos. He pulled the following cards from a standard deck of cards: 4, Jack, King, 2, 9, 9, 8, and an ace. What is the probability that he pulled a 2? Again, keyword pulled. That means he conducted an experiment. So with that being the case, that's considered experimental probability as well. Our next example is Rayshawn. He's playing a game in which he needs to roll a 4 or higher on a die in order to move his playing piece on the game board. What is the probability that he will roll a number that allows him to move? What's the probability that he will roll, which means he has not conducted the experiment yet, but we want to know what are the chances or what's the likelihood that he will roll or that he can roll. That's considered theoretical probability. Our next example is Thomas. He asks a friend to draw a card from his stack of 5 cards. The friend draws a 3. Tomas has him draw 4 more times and records the results. He records the results. He's recording the results that are taking place during this experiment. That's considered experimental probability. Now, to win a game, Nina must draw a queen from a shuffled deck of standard playing cards. What's the probability she will draw the queen she needs? There are 52 cards in a standard playing deck, and 4 of each kind: Jack, 5, 13 of each suit, hearts, spades. She will draw. What's the probability that she will draw the queen? She has not conducted the experiment yet. We are just identifying the probability based on the information that we know, so we consider that theoretical probability. Our next example, 3 friends. You and 3 of your friends are playing a board game, and in order to decide who will go first, you decide to roll a 6-sided number cube to see who comes closest to a 6, because you know that is a fair way to decide. You decide to roll a six-sided number cube. You have not conducted the experiment yet, but you decide to roll. With that being the case, we consider that theoretical probability. Now we have a bag that contains 5 yellow marbles, 2 blue marbles, and 3 other marbles. If Jerome reaches into a bag without looking, he picks a marble at random. What is the probability that it is blue? What is the probability that it is blue? Keyword if, because he has not conducted his experiment yet. So we consider that theoretical probability. And then last but not least, Kim loves math. Yes, Kim. Whenever she has a free minute or two at the end of class, she rolls a six-sided number cube and she records the results. She has recorded 500 results so far. She has recorded, so she's conducted this experiment already. With that being the case, I'm sure you already have placed it where it goes. Where does this belong in the sort? Exactly. Experimental probability. I hope that now you have a better idea of what terms and clues you need to look for to decide if you're determining the theoretical or experimental probability. For today's lesson, I want you to log on to quizzes to participate in 2 practice activities to help you reinforce your understanding of theoretical and experimental probability. Now, the links on these slides, but you can also find them in your learning plan. The quizzes activities will give you immediate feedback on your answers so that you know if you're headed in the right direction. You can always return to this lesson to revisit the vocabulary cards to help you remember the differences between theoretical and experimental probability and how to perform the calculations. Now, once you finish your quizzes activities, you're going to complete your independent practice activities. Remember, your independent practice is an important part of your lesson, and you've been working on them throughout the week. Be sure to show how all of your work is connected so that you can easily identify areas that you may need to revisit. And remember, recognizing mistakes, it's proof that you're growing. So let's take a look at where we're at. So today's lesson objective was to determine the experimental and theoretical probabilities of an event. And tomorrow, what we're going to do is wrap up our first week on probability with some more practice. If you had not had the opportunity to do so, please log on to the Padlet and let us know, hey, who's out there partnering with me? It'd be wonderful to see. The link is found on your learning plan. And once you finish your activity, remember that we're learning about Clean Air Month. And today's resource will help you learn about asthma and your health. Did you know that minorities have the highest number of emergency room visits, hospital stays, and death due to asthma? Well, be sure to visit the resources on your learning plan so that you can find out what's being done about this and what you can do to keep our air clean for ourselves, the ones we love, the world, and even our fellow students who we know have asthma as well. I thank you for being my learning partner again today. I want you to be safe. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous.